Hello, and welcome to Chapter 1, Who Should Lead? I'm very fortunate to be joined today by a good friend, Emre Demokan, who many years ago when I left education and before coming back into education helped me get one of my first jobs, which was in recruitment. So it's very appropriate today to have Emre join us to share with us his experience around how to select great leaders. Emre, before we get into today's topic, can you give us a little introduction about yourself?
Hi there, Michael. Yes, sure. So my entire 20-year career has been pretty much in the talent acquisition and technology space. I ran Microsoft's recruiting team in Greater China, helping them recruit hundreds of new hires at all levels of seniority. Currently, I work in product management for Smart Recruiters. They are a leading talent acquisition suite, and I'm very pleased to be here talking to you.
All right. So, I mean, I have a very high regard for you in terms of driving processes, which, even when I follow your career, where you really stood out in Microsoft and obviously where you've now moved into your new role, it is all about process. So starting there, what would you consider best practice for recruiting middle leaders?
I would say, first of all, make sure to build an inclusive job description, right? Really think about that it's clear. It avoids too many words that might be gender specific, or overly masculine is usually the problem that most job descriptions suffer from. Secondly, think about competencies that are required for the job. These really should be built so that you can assess for competencies during the interview. For instance, if influencing is a critical competency, then build an interview question around that, where you can ask the candidate to provide real life examples where they influenced either team members or a customer towards a particular direction. That really is a very important conversation to start. And it's really great because then you can ask probing questions after the initial question to really go deeper on a topic and really understand and assess whether the candidate has depth in that competency or whether they have a shallow understanding of it. Thirdly, I think building a really strong interview plan is critical. So if you have 3 or 4 interviewers who are joining you as part of your interview panel, it's really not a great idea if all of those individuals do a shallow interview and cover pretty much the same topics as each other. It's much better to organize them ahead of time so that they individually take a deep approach to a particular area, a skill area, a requirement area for the job, and go deep on it and not overlap much with each other so that each person can bring a unique point of view and really cover a lot of the basics for the job. And then use the same process with all the candidates that you interview for the job. I think that's really important because you want to have an apples to apples comparison. If you go off script too much, then it's going to be hard to compare the candidates to one another. And then finally, especially for recruiting middle leaders, look to understand the candidates' motivations around leading and people management. Are the candidates really motivated by coaching and growing their team members? Or does the person see a people management role as purely a career advancement opportunity? If it's the latter, then you're going to have to assess whether that's the right person for the job, because you really want people that are going to be motivated about growing their team members and helping them achieve more.
Yeah. I really like how you begin to narrow in on looking at the attributes, those skills that are going to be important for identifying the right leaders. And it's something that I recall when I was working on my first project, helping a school hire their head of school. You actually helped me devise the behavioral competency interview for those candidates. And one of the things that I really learned a lot from was it wasn't just about devising the questions, but those questions had to be rooted in those key skills and dispositions and personal attributes that we wanted to expect from our leaders. Can you go in a little bit more detail about how we surface those attributes? Because they are going to be unique from team to team.
Sure. Yeah, I think it really starts with understanding the requirements of the job. So build a model of what the perfect hire looks like as an exercise. I think that's always a useful one. Then link the requirements of the job to the skills and competencies that you need. So there's a lot of free content on the web around competency interviews and competencies themselves. You can also talk to management, HR, or organizational consultants who have experience in this space. So, some examples of general competencies that a lot of companies use are things like strategic thinking, driving for results, adaptability, collaboration, influencing. There's a whole list of them. So once you have the 3 or 4 competencies that you think are the most important, then try and build, like I mentioned in the first point, an assessment model that actually assesses those competencies with real life examples. It's also, I think, very useful to have an interactive session with candidates as well, where you can kind of work through a case study together. You get a really good sense of someone's thought process, as well as how they build assumptions and how they collaborate through such exercises. So it doesn't just have to be in a pure one-to-one interview setting. It can be a case study where maybe you even provide the individual with some time ahead of the interview to prepare for that case study. In fact, that's always my preference, because you could have a fantastic candidate who is very suitable for a job, but some people are better at kind of thinking on their feet in the immediate here and now than others. And you don't want to disadvantage the people who are maybe not as quick on their feet, but do come to really great outcomes if they have a bit more time to think about them.
That's a really great idea around like an idea of a case study, because one of the things that I really try to impress upon my readers and schools that I work with is that from year to year, the challenges for a team are always going to change. And so therefore, the cases under which we can identify great leadership should change as well, based on what those expectations are. I focus on these 3 dimensions of team, outcome, and capacity and capability. But it's interesting because those are dynamic and they will change. So you have to be prepared to change. Now, one last question for you that to me, I think really hits, is going to hit a very particular point with leaders in schools, is that do we necessarily need the most experienced or skilled person on the team to be the leader? Can we go outside the fact that this person might be the best at a particular subject or might have the most leadership experience and bring in somebody new? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think in my experience, it's not necessary to be the most skilled or the experienced member of a team. So each team has its own strengths, its own dynamics, ways of engagement, personalities. I think if you are a middle leader for a very experienced team of individual contributors who really have functional depth in their area of work, then you as their team leader need to bring the team leadership capability as well as the passion for people management. It's okay that you're not the most senior in terms of functional ability, because you already have a team that have that covered, right? You really need to bring your leadership experience in that sense. So that's why you might have, for instance, in a high school, a head of a department who may not be the most experienced teacher, but is still the right person for that job. If, however, you're leading an early in career junior team, then it might make sense for you to be both the most skilled leader and the experienced person on the team, as well as the person who has really the best leadership skills too. So it really depends on the makeup of your team.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really good point, because there are certain attributes about great leaders that involve, like you had mentioned it earlier, about the ability to coach and develop team members. So if you do have that sort of team of people that are new to the school, new to the curriculum, they are going to need a mentor, and that's a very critical leadership skill. So, you know, that could be something that we're looking for in our leaders. Whereas, say, if you had that team that was much more experienced, interpersonal skills might be more important, because we have to get this team of all-stars to be able to interact and play nicely together and be able to innovate. Emre, you've brought some really great points to this discussion. You've really opened up the thinking and helped me go deeper in this chapter. I want to thank you for taking that time with me today. And I look forward to having further collaborations and discussions with you around these topics in the future.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you.